everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. I'm Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And this is our 11th episode.
Is it our 11th, though?
I think it's our 11th.
Maybe it's our 10th.
We keep losing track. So a couple weeks back, we were in Seattle for the Seattle Veg Fest, which I think we mentioned before, and we were able to sit down and talk with Ashlee Harrison, who actually we were staying with her and her husband, and she has like life figured out in a way that I can't even comprehend. She has a little life hack for absolutely everything, and it's kind of awe-inspiring to sit back and watch it, actually.
You know, it's really funny you mentioned that because I was actually texting her this morning and I was saying how just that I need to go back there and visit her and because she just seems to have life figured out. And she started laughing and it's like, what do you mean? What made you think of that? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, we've been pretty busy lately and life is kind of chaotic and stuff is all over the place. And we could use some Ashlee life hacks right about now.
Oh, I've never felt like my house was so dirty in my entire life as I did staying with Ashlee. Just like perfectly decorated, everything, not a speck of a crumb anywhere to be seen. Oh, God. It's not like that here. We try, though. We do try. But when you have 4 animals running around you all the time, cleaning up is just... Sometimes it's like, why am I even bothering doing this?
I mean, there's so much going on right now, too. And if you don't have those Ashlee life hack systems in place before the madness starts, it can be challenging.
Well, one of the things Ashlee has down is her meal prep is out of control. It's so beautiful. She's one of those people whose meal prep looks beautiful and not like a big sloppy mess at the end of it. It just looks beautiful. It looks enticing. You would think making your food 7 days in advance would kind of be like, ugh, boring. I have to eat this for 7 days. But somehow she manages to make it look really good. And it's very, very organized. And she is the genius of meal prepping. So without further ado, we'll get to our interview with Ashlee Harrison here.
Also known as the meal prep queen.
All right, today we have Ashlee Harrison with us to talk about meal prepping because she's basically like the meal prepping queen. Ashlee Harrison is a figure competitor on Team Plant Built. She lives in Seattle, Washington, which is where we are right now at the time of this recording. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ashlee. All right. How long have you been vegan?
Going on 2 years.
Just a real chatterbox.
I know.
How long have you been meal prepping?
About the same amount of time.
Because you started being vegan and sort of getting into the bodybuilding scene at the same time, right?
Yes.
All right. Cool. So how did you start meal prepping?
Well, I tend to work long days at work. I work 4 10-hour shifts, and I work pretty far from home. So I'm gone with going to the gym in the morning, probably 14 hours a day. So I quickly learned that I needed to be meal prepping so that I would be able to stay on my goals while I'm trying to train for a contest. So.
Yeah, Ashlee is super, super busy. We've been staying with her and her husband Christopher this week while we're here in Seattle. And this morning I woke up in what I thought was the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And they were literally already gone. Like it was still dark outside and they were like already probably done working out for the day. So it's pretty impressive that in all of that, they're able to keep up with their nutrition by making sure that they meal prep every week. How often do you do your meal prep?
Once a week. And we grocery shop usually on Saturday. That tends to be our day. We get up, go to the gym, maybe get coffee. We come home as we're eating after the gym and we sit down and make our entire grocery list for what we need. We both have completely different needs. So Christopher's responsible for making his own grocery list and I do mine. And then we go grocery shopping and we come home, put it all away. If there's anything that needs to be taken care of, I will. So one of the things that I am obsessed with is cilantro, and it comes pretty soggy. So that's one of the only things before I put it away is I'll put a paper towel in the cilantro bag. And then all of our food gets put away. And then we meal prep on Sunday mornings.
So you go shopping on Saturday and then you meal prep on Sunday.
Isn't that your favorite, cilantro?
I hate cilantro. I really hate cilantro. There's a website. It's called IHateCilantro.com. There's a large community of us. If you hate cilantro, you are not alone.
Oh, wah wah.
I like cilantro, Ashlee.
Good.
So Ashlee lives in a really big, nice house. They have a beautiful kitchen, but she has a lot of roommates. So there's a lot of like sharing of kitchen space. And how do you find that impacts your ability to meal prep?
Well, we do have a great kitchen. I mean, I do have to say that we're probably luckier than most people. I have 2 ovens, a gas range, dishwasher, lots of cupboard space, lots of counter space. However, we do live in this house with 6 of us total, and Christopher and I pretty much try to put all of our prepared food on one drawer, or I should say on one shelf in the fridge, and one drawer for our vegetables. And then we each of us has a cupboard essentially. So we do extend a little bit farther than that with condiments that we share with everybody in the house, and sometimes like our soy milk and such. But for the most part, we're able to keep an entire week's worth of separated foods. Again, because Christopher and I eat completely differently, pretty much on like one little tiny shelf in the kitchen. So we stack a lot of Tupperware and such in there.
And that's pretty impressive, because when I do meal prepping for the week to save on time, I actually take up half of our refrigerator, and Danny just doesn't even understand it. So that's pretty crazy that you get it on one shelf and one drawer. And
So what she's saying is it can be done.
it sounds like it.
So you need to work on that.
I think you take up the space that you're given. Right. So we try to be courteous to our roommates, and they're in turn good with us. We're also pretty lucky. Our roommates don't also shop the way that we do. So, if they were all shopping for the entire week and meal prepping, I think we might have a harder time. But our roommates are all mostly single, and they tend to eat a couple days at a time. So I think we're lucky in that regard as well.
Have you found any like big pains in the asses with meal prepping?
Yes, I have significantly changed my meal prep from a year ago. I have greatly simplified it. I used to do a lot of extras, I guess, and wanting to make sweet potatoes and pressing tofu and cooking tofu ahead of time. And I found that my tastes have changed enough that I tend to like things to be simpler. So I don't tend to cook a lot of things ahead of time, but I do like to have hot food for dinner. So if I'm going to have kale or vegetables of some kind, I will dice them and prepare them, but they go in the refrigerator cold now, and I just cook it at night. Because oftentimes when I come home, it's about 6:30, and because I do get up around 4 to 4:30, I go to bed by 8. Mm-hmm. So I want to be in bed pretty quickly. So oftentimes I'll come home, I'll throw that stuff in a pan with some garlic and let it saute on its own while I go shower and get ready for the day. Or I'll throw it in the oven and let it kind of bake, and then come out and get it anywhere from a half an hour, 45 minutes later, depending, and then it's ready. So I don't need to have it pre-cooked and then heating up somewhat mushy food.
So back when you were cooking a bunch of different things, what were some of the tips that you had for getting that done in the shortest amount of time possible?
Well, anytime that I had anything that needed to be cooked or baked, I did first. So I've always had salad. I'm a firm believer in having salad for lunch. That's like my favoriteest thing ever, and it's the best way to get all my greens. So I would lay out all my salad stuff to get ready, and then I would say I'd have potatoes. So I'd dice my potatoes, put them in the oven, get my tofu starting pressed, put those in the oven when I was done with my potatoes. And again, I'm lucky because I have 2 ovens, but oftentimes I would still only use one, and kind of rotate those out. And then while that stuff is baking, wash those dishes for what I've used, and then start doing my salads and get my salads ready to go.
Does your food get like soggy and gross in the fridge by the end of the week?
Not usually. So what I tend to do, which I have found over time has helped so much, and I can't reiterate this enough, and people ask all the time, I will lay out all my Tupperware. I count how many salads that I need. I'll buy a big thing of lettuce either at the farmer's market, or if I need to, just in the prepackaged plastic from the store. and I put a little half sheet of paper towels. We like to buy those select size kind, and I just will take either half of one of those or fold it in half, stick it in the bottom of the Tupperware, and then I just toss in the lettuce. I don't really have any rhyme or reason. I just make whatever I bought last for however many salads I need. And I keep my salads pretty simple. There's some type of mixed lettuce, cherry tomatoes, mushrooms, cilantro, and green onions. And I found that is what makes me the most satisfied, and it's not too overly complicated. And then once I lay all that stuff out in each of my Tupperwares, I just let it sit the rest of the time I'm doing any of my other meal prep. So anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, and sometimes it even sits there longer than when I'm done with my meal prep. I basically want it to be pretty much dry. And then I'll put the lids on it and stick them in the fridge. And since I do this on Sunday, by the time Saturday rolls around, there's maybe a couple pieces of brown lettuce I have to pick out. I do find that if I'm lucky enough to be able to go to the farmer's market, it just lasts so much longer. There's less stuff I have to pick out. And my thought is that they probably got that lettuce that morning.
Yeah, it's probably pretty fresh.
Whereas the stuff from the store, even if it's organic, who knows when it was picked. So
yeah, that's a good point. So that's like one of the best tips ever is put a paper towel underneath your salad and then let it air out for a couple hours before you put it in the fridge, and it'll last a lot longer. I never ever would have thought of that. And I think that one tip alone is going to help a lot of people.
I also try to get a Tupperware that's big enough that you're not cramming it in there, because then the lettuce won't really ever get dry. So I try not to pack it in there too much, and that helps.
All right, so you have all this food prepped out for the week, and you found how to make it fit just right in the refrigerator, even with living with 6 people. Now, when it comes time to take the food with you for the day, and how do you pack it? How does it stay fresh throughout the day? And how do you get your meals ready and eat them on the road?
So every night that I come home, I go through what I'm going to be eating the next day and set it out on the counter. And I have to literally go through it meal by meal, because I wouldn't be in trouble if I forgot something, which has happened. And then, I'm stuck at work and I have no option for food, especially at some of our offices. There's no grocery stores or even a cafe in there. So if I don't bring something, I'm out of luck. So I put everything I'm going to take for the day in a separate part of the refrigerator. And then in the morning, when I get up at 4:30, I can grab it. I throw everything in my 6-pack bag. That's just so happens to be the best thing for me. They have a little backpack one that I carry around, and it's great. My hands are free. And I do that because it has the little cold pouch in there that I can keep cold, because I leave it in the car until about 7:30 when I get to work. So when I get to work, I can stick it all in the fridge, and there's never a problem at the fridge at work to put my food in. But that's how I transport it. And then I come home, and all the Tupperware gets washed immediately after work, either by myself or my fantastic husband. And we hand wash it so that it doesn't get mixed in with the general population of our house. If we lived alone, I probably wouldn't care so much about it going in the dishwasher, but we hand wash it so that it can be placed away properly in our proper cupboard away from everyone else, so that we don't lose any pieces of our Tupperware.
Yeah, I asked before we started recording this, I asked Ashlee if she when she loses a lid to a Tupperware container, if she throws the rest of it away. And she said,
I've never lost a lid.
She's never lost a friggin' lid. She's the only person in the goddamn world who has never lost a Tupperware lid. I just had to let you all know that. That's how good she is. That's like saying I've never lost a sock in the laundry before. Speaking of which, another thing that Ashlee and Christopher do that's really, really cool, while they're meal prepping, they also do their laundry at the same time. So they're getting all these tasks done at once. Is there anything else you guys have going while you're doing that?
Generally, it's mostly just laundry, chores. And I'm very lucky. Christopher tends to handle all that. So I don't want to take credit for something that he does. I'm very lucky that I have a supportive spouse and someone who helps me and supports the crazy things I do with bodybuilding. But not only does he support me emotionally, but physically doing all kinds of stuff around the house to help. So
yeah, and it's like, but even without bodybuilding, like you mentioned, when you have a very busy lifestyle, meal prepping can be incredibly helpful. I mean, Christopher, for example, isn't meal prepping for bodybuilding reasons. He's doing it because he wants to make sure that he's eating healthy and he has his food throughout the day. Because, I mean, how many people do you know of that have busy lifestyles and they're eating maybe once or twice a day, and they find themselves having all sorts of, options that they wouldn't necessarily have wanted to have, but, it's just because they have no choices and they have to get their food in.
And then when they come home at the end of the night, they're ravenous and they just eat a ton before they go to bed. That's not the best thing for you. It probably feels really bad when you have to go to sleep early on a stomach that full.
And that would be my problem. Christopher, what I like about him doing his meal prep is he's the exact opposite. He's the kind of person that won't eat, or if he becomes too busy, he's too tired to eat. So for me, what I like about it for him is that I can guarantee he's actually going to eat. So when he comes home and he's too tired, he doesn't really have that excuse to say, well, I don't know what I'm going to make for dinner. I'll just eat pickles. He will actually eat some food this way, which he may not eat all of it, but at least he has nutritious food that he's thought of and put time and effort into preparing and will eat it.
Yeah, there's some phenomenon about meal prepping. Like once you've actually cooked it and prepared it, you are way more likely to eat it than if you just had the ingredients sitting in your fridge and had to come home and actually make it. Then maybe you would skip it if you're kind of tired. But once you make it, you're way more likely to actually eat it, which is the point.
Yes.
So one complaint that I hear about people who meal prep a lot is that their kitchen is just destroyed afterwards. Do you have any tips for that?
Yes, do your dishes as you go. It's huge. So Christopher and I tend to have completely different meals to prep, but also what that entails. And so generally we try to each clean up as we go. He may have a significant amount more dishes than I do, or vice versa. And he may be at a spot where he isn't necessarily prepping anything at the moment or getting prepared to do the next thing. And we kind of just try to keep on top of the dishes as we go. He does tend to do more of the dishes than I do. But I think that a lot of it is he's just trying to help because I tend to have a little bit more to do than him.
Yeah, I think it really helps too. Even if you don't have a lot of counter space or a larger kitchen, it can still be done. I mean, we have a smaller kitchen than yours, and so it can be kind of challenging to do dishes as you go when you're preparing food and basically washing dishes on the same counter. But I found it to be a lot more helpful, like you said, if you do the dishes as you're going along. Otherwise, you're just going to have a huge pile of a cleanup afterwards.
And we do have a dishwasher, but we tend to just put a really hot sink full of water, soapy water, and we hand wash a lot of dishes. And then in addition to that, I think we both try to reuse dishes if needed, or think about what we're chopping and chop in that order. Like I'll chop up my strawberries and then maybe do green onions after my strawberries, because I don't care if my green onions taste like strawberries, but I don't want my strawberries to taste like green onions. But I won't necessarily need to get a new cutting board for that, or even a new knife.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. Cutting things up in that order.
I've also started cutting a lot of things with scissors instead of knives because I'm lazy.
Like green onions?
Yep, and cilantro. I just cut it over my my salads.
I do the same thing, actually.
So much better.
Another thing that I find helpful back in the day when I used to meal prep large portions at a time is since we have a small kitchen, I would pull the trash barrel out from under the sink, which is where it usually was. And so I would just have access to it the whole time. And then as soon as I was done, just take the trash out, because you don't want all these food scraps like sitting under your sink, just like rotting for the next couple of days. But in Seattle, it is now illegal to throw away any food waste, which is really, really cool. Good for you, Seattle. So here, Ashlee and Christopher, they compost all their food scraps from when they're meal prepping, which is really, really cool too. So one thing that I think is really important, and even back when I did meal prep, I used to try to do this, is meal prepping doesn't have to be this god-awful chore. It can actually be pretty fun if you take the time to make it fun, like anything else. So what's some stuff that you and Christopher do to make meal prep not suck?
Well, we do. Christopher has an extensive record collection. That's kind of his hobby. So we like to listen to records in the morning when we're meal prepping, which can also be a little bit of a challenge when your hands are dirty and it's time to flip the record. The other thing that we like to do to make it a little bit, or at least I like to do, Christopher tends to get up a little bit later than me on Sundays, and I try to let him sleep in. So I do try to sneak him in a breakfast maybe that he doesn't know that I'm making. A lot of times I have extra berries that I don't get to eat and I don't want them to go to waste. So I'll try to come up with just making him something that has berries, or maybe bacon that we bought that seitan bacon that I'm not allowed to have necessarily. But he does get to. So I try to spoil him a little bit. That's how he does my dishes. So that's how we make it fun.
How about you, Giacomo?
I like to watch TV when I meal prep sometimes, or other times I'll listen to some music. Just it keeps it interesting. Catch up on a movie that I've been meaning to watch. Or
Yeah, we have an open kitchen that leads straight into our living room. So from the kitchen counter where you would be standing to meal prep anyway, you can see the TV just because of the way the house is set up. So it's not like we have a TV in our kitchen. We're not that weird.
Yeah, and it's pretty nice. I mean, if you think about it, when you're cooking, even if you're cleaning up in between your meal prep, there's still some dead time, and that's where you can do other things that you might otherwise put off, like doing the laundry, for example. I mean, how many of us want to do laundry every single week? Not necessarily, but if you have that dead time in between, it's a good way to just fit it in.
Yeah, and also just, spending time with whoever it is you're doing it with. Even when I'm not meal prepping and Giacomo is, we're still pretty much hanging out in the same area. And it's a good time to just talk to one another. Your face isn't in a screen for the most part. And a lot of times our faces are in screens for work and just staring at your phone. And, you actually get to speak to one another on a level more than just how's it going? How was your day? So you can make meal prep a lot of fun. And if you're a busy person, or if you're a very regimented person who likes to sort of have a plan, meal prepping can be a really, really great way to stay on top of your goals and your health and all that jazz. So Ashlee, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
I do have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, which I've been currently taking a little bit of a hiatus from, not for any particular reason other than just trying to refocus and kind of actually live life in the moment instead of trying to live life for putting it on Instagram. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just enjoy it. But I am still kind of keeping track of people who friend request or follow. So I'm at Plant Built Ashlee for Instagram, and just Ashlee Harrison on Facebook.
And you can find more information about her also at plantbuilt.com. She's one of our current athletes. So you can find her there too. Thank you so much for coming on today, Ashlee.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Well, that was a lot of fun having Ashlee on the show. It's not often that we get to interview guests in person, and I think it makes for a way better interview when we're together. Speaking of meal prep, there's so many different ways to go about it, and I don't think that one way is necessarily better than another. And another thing with being involved with coaching and competing, it's pretty good practice to try to do different types of meal prep, where sometimes you're preparing food in advance, sometimes it's day of. Sometimes, you're eating specific meals and you have them planned out, whereas other times you're planning it in the middle of the day. And right now, I mean, I've tried the meal prepping in advance for a while, and lately I've kind of been winging it day of, just to switch things up a little bit and see how I feel about it. And I've been enjoying it, actually.
Yeah, Giacomo used to obsessively meal prep one day a week and take 4 hours to set everything aside and meal prep everything for the week. And I've never been very good at that. Not because I am not actually good at it, but because I just prefer to eat my food fresh every day. And I know you can keep food fresh for several days, obviously, but my tastes change from day to day. I've never been very good at following an exact, precise meal plan, which is kind of funny because Giacomo makes fun of me because I do eat the same thing every day.
The same freaking thing.
See, he thinks it's the same thing, but tiny things change about it.
Well, no, the best part, hold on, I'm not going to, the best part about it is that I give her something different, something small, that's just so easy to plug in and I'm like, hey, why don't you try this cookie, or why don't you try this apple or something? And she just looks at me. It's like, what? Is it not the same thing you eat every day? So you're a creature of habit.
I like what I like, and I know what I like, and that's what I want. So
Yeah.
I don't want your damn cookie.
Yeah, and I need to have like something different every other minute. I don't know why.
I think it's just you, like, rebelling against the fact that you ate the same thing every single day for years, basically.
Maybe.
But for me, I do eat the same thing every morning for breakfast, pretty much. Total creature of habit. And while I'm eating my breakfast, I sort of plan out the rest of my day. And the way I do it is I always have the same breakfast, very similar lunches every day, similar dinners every day. And then I have this meal in the middle of the day, and that's kind of what I play around with whatever macros I have available to me. I just sort of make this like weird hodgepodge of things for my third meal every day, and that's kind of where I play around. But no matter what, that meal is never my favorite meal anyway. I haven't found anything that really works for me. But I do my meal planning in the morning. Back when I used to work all day long, I'd get up and leave the house. I would wake up about a half an hour earlier than I probably needed to, and I would just cook all my food for the day in the morning and put it all in my little containers and go off to work. And that really, really worked for me. All of the food was, pretty fresh all the way throughout the day. For me, definitely more fresh than if I had made it, 3 days prior or something like that. And I would just do that every single day, and that allowed me to sort of make up what I wanted to eat for that day without like a huge commitment to having to eat the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to eat, fresh food because I just suck at eating leftovers. And to me, a lot of times that's what it seems like, is like you're eating leftovers, and I don't like leftovers.
Yeah, or I mean, just having limited choices where, in other words, 5 days in advance, you've already planned what you're eating out for that day. You can feel like you want to rebel. I feel like every single week, actually, there was probably maybe anywhere from like 1 to 5 meals that I never got around to. Well, social engagements pop up, or you're just not in the mood for what you made. And, so that's a downside. But
Yeah, because then you end up wasting food.
Yeah, exactly. You end up wasting food. But some potential upsides are, I do think that having that structure in place does save a bit of time.
Yeah.
Some people are not ever in the kitchen long enough to make their own meals or choose their own meals day of, or even a day before. Some people are just, commuting back and forth to work.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know that we're like in a pretty privileged place right now where we work from home and we make our own schedules, and most people are not doing that. Most people are getting up and going to work, or they have other obligations at specific times. And I think meal prepping in some way or another is so, so, so important to so many people's success. And I totally get that. And I teach my clients how to do that, absolutely, especially in the beginning. And it's just, my meal planning, my meal prepping has changed so much over the years to not doing it so much, because I am 5 feet from the kitchen all the time, so I can make what I want when I want.
exactly.
Some things that I do prep out and you do prep out, we prep out our supplements in advance.
Yeah. Well, who wants to measure and all that, scoop of this,
Yeah.
capsule of that.
When you're taking multiple supplements, most people can relate to this, like forgetting to take their vitamins or something. How many people tell me every week, oh, I kind of forgot to take my vitamins for a few days. It's really easy to forget to take your vitamins or what have you. So we have little tiny containers, like they're called Go Stacks. And we put our supplements, our powders, our capsules, whatever it is we're taking in there for the week. And then I just throw it in my gym bag at night, so it's already there for when I go to the gym the next morning, and I can take my supplements there.
Yeah, we carry those on the website. You can check them out at VeganProteins.com. If you type in GoStack, you'll see
Go
them.
Stack with a K, no
yes,
C.
exactly.
Yeah, Go Stack, STAK.
Anyhow, they're mighty convenient. I really enjoy preparing those in advance, and like you said, it makes sure that I don't forget anything.
Yeah, it's really, if you're trying to stay on a diligent supplement regimen, planning those out in advance, prepping them out in advance, or sorting them, pre-measuring them out in advance is really, really a huge time saver and a mess saver. There's not powder everywhere all the time. It's just powder once a week, and then you clean it up. So So unfortunately, our own personal meal prepping isn't really anything that exciting. And what we do really isn't practical for most people, so I totally understand that. But, we have both done meal prepping for extended periods of time in the past, and we understand the value in that. And you really have to find what works for you more than anything, whether that's prepping your food just for the day, doing it in one huge batch once a week, doing it a couple times a week, whatever works best for you. Just experiment around with it and see what feels best. And this is why we had Ashlee on the show.
Moving on to our product review segment for this week's episode, we're taking a look at the ISO bag.
What is the ISO bag?
Yeah, what is the ISO bag?
The ISO bag is basically a single person size food cooler / lunchbox.
Right.
It's made out of like a canvasy material. It's insulated. It has pockets for water bottles and condiments and little silverware. I'm the only one who uses little silverware, but it has pockets for little silverware. And it comes with its own Tupperware, which is kind of flimsy, but you can fit about 3 to 4 meals in a medium-sized ISO bag.
Yeah, and what I found very interesting about it is when you compare it to another popular bag on the market, the 6-pack bag, it's smaller and yet it seems to fit almost the same amount of meals in it, basically.
I think it fits more.
More? Think so?
I think so, yeah.
And some pros are that, well, one, the 6-pack bag is stiff. You can't collapse it at all. So when you have to travel with that thing,
it's enormous.
Yeah. And I mean, it's there, basically. You can't really pack it in your luggage if you have anything else in your luggage. Or if you're taking it on the plane, it can be a pain to stuff underneath the seat.
You can't stuff it under the seat. You have to put it over your head.
Yeah. And the ISO bag is completely collapsible, so you can actually put it in your luggage when you're done, or
when it's empty, you can squish it down.
Which is pretty awesome.
We have an ISO bag and we have 6-pack bags, so we don't hate 6-pack bags or anything like that. They're really cool, and they make some cool designs like purses and backpacks and stuff like that. But to me, the 6-pack bags seem to break down really quickly. The zipper will snap or it'll start to tear. And the ISO bag, first of all, was half the price of the 6-pack bag. Mm-hmm. And it's super, super sturdy and durable.
Well, and the reason being is because the ISO bags are manufactured in America, and I guess they're doing a better job with the stitching on them, whereas opposed to maybe the 6-pack bags are factory made and just not as much quality control on
they're
the
made overseas
production process on them. And so we have, like I said, like Danny was saying, we have both bags, and the 6-pack bag, the stitching is all ripped off and the inside is exposed on them. And the ISO bag, it's still intact, and we got them around the same time.
Yeah. So if you're a person who packs all their food for the day and takes it with them to work, I think the ISO bag is great, because when you're done, you can just squish it down and put it in your other bag. Assuming you don't have it full of Tupperware or anything like that. They come in a bunch of colors. They're made here in the USA. They're made in a pretty small factory, although they are growing. Giacomo and I are actually considering carrying them at VeganProteins.com, so keep your eye open for that in the near future. Mm-hmm. And they're a lot more affordable than the other similar bags on the market, like 6-pack bags. So ISO bags get our thumbs up.
All right, moving on to our question segment for this week. And we asked for meal prep questions specifically, and actually got a lot of questions. And thank you so much for getting back to us with that. Let's take a look at some of them over here, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. First question was on Facebook by Denise Wolf, and she asked, I want to know it all. How long does the food stay fresh? Tips and tricks for storage. How do you figure out what to eat and how much? This is all new to me, so I'm excited that you are doing this podcast.
Well, thanks, Denise. I'm glad you're excited about it. We're excited to make it. So the first thing about how the food stays fresh, Ashlee gave a great tip about keeping salads fresh with the paper towel at the bottom of the Tupperware container and leaving it open so it kind of dries out. I mean, that's a brilliant tip and one that I haven't really heard elsewhere. Other ways to keep food fresh. Most foods will stay fresh for up to a week in the fridge. cut up vegetables, maybe not so much. If you do cut up vegetables, especially crunchy ones like carrots or onions or cucumber or even squash and zucchini, you can keep them fresh in the fridge by submerging them in water. So covering them in water and then closing the container and putting it in the fridge, and that's going to keep them crunchy instead of getting all wilty and soggy. So that's great if you like make sandwiches in the morning, get your onion out of there so it's still crispy and not wilty and gross. Anything that you can put off cutting until that day is better. Like if you're packing lunches for your kids or something like that, waiting till that morning to slice up the apple obviously is going to stop it from turning brown. As far as storage goes, this really depends on the household. For a lot of people, it's not practical to portion everything out into single meals in Tupperware and put them in the fridge, because that's just going to take up so much more space. So certain things you can portion out individually, like maybe your soy yogurt or something like that, put it into their own little individual containers. But some things like grains like rice, quinoa, and beans and things like that, I think it's better to keep them in a large container in the fridge. So like the brown rice is in a large container, your beans are in a large container, and then you just put them together in the morning as you need them. It'll take you an extra 5 minutes in the morning, but if you don't have the space, that's a better way to do it. As far as the containers go, there are lots and lots of types of containers that you can get. I know a lot of people are plastic free, so there are some glass containers that you can use. I'm a big fan of mason jars because you can use them for so many different things. If you are going to use, basically whatever type of container you choose to use, I highly suggest that you get the kinds that nest together so that you don't have to take up a ton of space in your cabinets or your drawers or whatever with Tupperware or Pyrex dishes or something like that. So try to get the kinds that nest just to take up less space when they're empty.
And ones that lock well on top, because the last thing you want is your meal popping open.
That is a very good point
in your bag
that you bring up there.
And even a lot of the ones that say that they lock tight still don't. I know Rubbermaid makes a pretty good one, on the plastic side.
I think the Ziploc ones are pretty good too.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that you're getting the right Ziploc ones.
Yeah. As far as knowing how much to prep and of what, that's kind of a bigger topic for another day. So we'll set that question to the side and we'll come back to that again on another day when we talk about sort of designing your own meal plan and flexible dieting and things like that. So we're not answering you. We're just putting that one off for a little bit. So our next question, kind of two questions, come from Instagram. From Sunshine Superhero asks, how do you hit macro goals without meat substitutes like Beyond Meat, Gardein, etc.? And then CS Chew 16 asked the same question and said also, what are the best veggies to add more whole food protein?
Okay, that's a pretty good two-parter there, because the second question kind of helps answer the first one. The macro goals, it depends on what they are, right? But I'm going to go ahead and assume that we're trying to make sure we're meeting our protein requirements and we're doing that without meat alternatives. And vegetables are great. The amount of protein in dark green leafy vegetables specifically, I'm talking spinach, for example, or broccoli is another good one. Mushrooms. About 40% protein, I think, roughly?
Mushrooms they're somewhere between 40 and 50% protein. You need to eat a lot of them to get a significant amount of total protein, but mushrooms cook down pretty small.
Yeah.
So you can start with a lot.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised just how much the protein points rack up when you start adding in these vegetables, specifically protein-dense ones.
They also asked, the first person said just without meat substitutes like Beyond Meat and Gardein. So, protein powders, obviously, there's so many to choose from that if you're avoiding certain foods like soy or gluten or what have you. For allergies or whatever reason.
Right.
There's a lot of different protein powders on the market, and it's really easy to just throw a half a scoop of it in a green smoothie or something like that to just bump up your protein for that day. Other little protein extras, nutritional yeast is a good one. The Explore Asian black bean pasta, which we've talked about on this show before.
Love that stuff.
It's the only ingredients in it are black beans and water.
You know what's pretty awesome
And it's
about
super
it?
high in protein.
Like, cooks faster than normal pasta.
Yeah, it's a pretty fast cooker.
As soon as the water's boiled, I mean, bam, it's ready in 5 minutes.
And as far as beans go, because everybody always wants to ask about beans as a protein source, the best bean to eat to get the most protein are lentils. I mean, aside from soybeans, obviously, but lentils. And if you do eat soy, edamame is really, really good too.
Next question is from @TG_greengains on Instagram. And he asks, how far in advance can you prep rice and lentils? And how long do they keep for in the fridge?
All right, so TG Green Gains is actually one of my clients. So what's up, Kyle? I'm going to answer your question on the podcast, all right? So the cool thing about rice and beans, actually, is you can cook an enormous pot of each of them and then freeze most of it. Once it's cooked, you can just freeze it until a couple days before you need it, and then it just has to thaw and be reheated, and you can eat it. So essentially, you could make it way in advance. I mean, you could make it probably a month in advance and just store as much of it as you can in your freezer. As far as how long it'll actually stay good in the fridge for, I would say not more than 5 days. Like by the 5th day, if it's just a big batch of rice and beans in each container or whatever, by the 5th day it starts to get a little gummy.
I mean, you can do day 6 and day 7, but you're kind of pushing it.
Yeah, you're pushing it.
Yeah, it gets
I
a little
would say.
funky.
Yeah, I would say 5 days. Five days is what I'm comfortable saying
That's a sweet spot.
on a podcast there, yeah. But like I said, freeze as much of it as you can, and then when you know you only have like a day left in the fridge, pull out another few days from the freezer. And part of that is once you cook it, you can portion it into like big Ziploc bag type things and put those in the freezer so you can pull out one at a time. Because if you try and freeze all your rice or all your lentils together, you're going to be left with a rice brick in your freezer, and it's going to be really hard to just get some of it.
I don't know. Rice brick kind of sounds good right about now. I haven't had dinner yet.
So yeah, that is my advice for cooking rice and lentils, which I know you like quite a bit. Our next question is from Instagram. Username is, I'm probably going to butcher this, I'm sorry. And I see you on Instagram all the time, so I know who you are. Name is Ashja Solja, I think. How do you preserve tofu? I usually grocery shop every 2 weeks. Sometimes after 1 week, my tofu is rotten.
You know, there's actually a really good way to do this, and it even changes the texture and taste a little bit in a good way. The what you do basically is just freeze it. That's it. And then when you're ready to use it, thaw it out, either overnight in the refrigerator or day of on the counter. And it comes out, the tofu actually has a meatier and chewier texture to it.
After it's been frozen.
Right, after it's been frozen, as opposed to just having it fresh out of the package. And I actually learned this because I think I asked you, we were at a restaurant in Oregon, in Portland, called Hungry Tiger 2, and I was like, how the hell do they make the tofu taste like that? Like, why is it so chewy? And you told me they froze it, and I was like, what? Like, you freeze tofu? And it was like game-changing. So I was pretty excited about that because I personally, I enjoy it way more after it's frozen and been thawed out. I guess it's more of a personal preference.
It is. Some people don't like it. So I would say just do it with one block or something like that, just to see if you like it or not, because it's a little bit, it is chewier, it is meatier, but some people say it's a little spongier too. I think it's really good, but I know that not everybody likes it that way. Another way that you can preserve your tofu, this is how I used to do it, is I would cook it up all at once. Like make a huge batch of baked tofu, because that's my favorite way to have tofu anyway, is like sliced pretty thin on a cookie sheet with some parchment paper under it and just some seasonings on it, and I would bake it until it gets a little bit crispy on the outside. And once it's cooked, it stays good in the fridge much, much longer than when it's like sitting in water in the fridge. So that's another thing that you could do that for the whole week. I don't know if it would work for 2 weeks, but I know that you can do it for 1 week. I'm not sure if it would last for 2 weeks, though. It will last in the freezer. obviously, but that is up to your tastes and whether or not you like it that way.
All right, and the next question is a couple people asked this actually. At Fitness You Can Live With and at Vegan Fit Lady. I rarely eat Gardein and Beyond Meat products, but track my macros every day. So I rely a lot on tofu, tempeh, beans, etc. But sometimes I want to throw a lower carb day in there. I feel like tofu is my only option. And then the second part of this, at Vegan Lady says, yeah, I'm curious too. I personally like homemade seitan, but curious if I can incorporate more beans without being too much on carbs.
So again, kind of like Giacomo said, it really all depends on what your macronutrient goals are at this point in time. If you're in a maintenance or a building phase or something like that, it's probably not going to be too hard to hit your protein goals without using mock meats or anything like that. If you're on a cut of any kind, it becomes a little bit more difficult and a little bit more important that you hit your protein goals for that day. They might be a little bit higher. When trying to do a low carb day as a vegan who does not consume mock meats like Beyond Meat and Gardein, it can be a little bit challenging. I mean, tofu is a great food to have on a lower carb day. Seitan is fantastic. I really, really like that as well. And then just a lot of veggies because you're not going to be having grains or things
filling.
like that. They are filling, but they're not very calorically dense, which can be good when you're on a cut. But they do have a significant amount of protein per calorie, but you can only eat so many of them. So a few other things, like I said before, nutritional yeast is great. That black bean pasta is fantastic. So you get 25 grams of protein for 17 grams of carbs. That's by Explore Asian. And again, throwing in a protein shake in there, whichever one you prefer, can be really, really good as well. As far as incorporating beans without getting too many carbs, so a lot of people and a lot of vegans perpetuate this idea that beans are high in protein, and they're really not. Mushrooms are higher in protein than beans per se. Mushrooms are like 40% protein, and beans, I was looking up black beans today actually, they're 22% protein. They're 70-something percent carbs. Beans are really a carb, basically. I mean, I don't like to call anything a protein food or a carb food because they all have a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. But if you had to call beans something, they're a carbohydrate.
But when the protein in the beans will sneak up. I mean, it'll help add.
Absolutely. The protein in beans is not to be discounted or anything like that. But if you're specifically trying to keep your carbs at a certain level, it's pretty easy to push you over the edge.
Yeah, you're not going to be loading up on beans.
You're not going to be using beans as a protein source on a lower carb day. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't recommend that. Unless you're like a big guy with this crazy fast metabolism, but we can't all be that lucky. So if you do choose to incorporate beans in some way, again, I would suggest that black bean pasta. I can't speak highly enough about that. And if you are going to work beans in there somehow, lentils, soybeans, those are really, really good as well. And the last question we have here today is from Instagram. It's at the vegan Barbie with underscores. Would love meal prep ideas for people who have no canteen or microwave at work. So stuff you can eat cold without reheating. Love the podcast so much. Wish there was a new one every day.
Well, thanks for saying that, the vegan Barbie. Stuff you can do without a canteen or microwave. Overnight oats go over pretty well. You just basically, toss whatever you want in some dry oats, pour some water, and the night before and then morning of, you have something good that you don't have to reheat. What else?
Salads, obviously, are a really, really good one. And you can get really, really creative with salads, so it's not super boring. You can put beans on there. You can throw grains on there. You could do, like a 3-bean salad, a cold 3-bean salad, which is so, so good. I'm a huge sandwich girl. I love sandwiches. And even sandwiches that are supposed to be eaten hot still can taste really good when they're cold. So I do love sandwiches. Hummus and pita, like a maza platter. Grape leaves,
Carry
tabbouleh,
some baby carrots or something. You can
baby carrots, fruit, obviously. is always really good. Bringing a smoothie with you of some kind. A lot of people make a fruit smoothie or a protein smoothie or a green smoothie. They make it at night, put it in the fridge so it gets really, really cold overnight. Some people even freeze it. And then they take it to work frozen. And throughout the day, it thaws out. And then, it's cold, but it's liquid and drinkable by the middle of the day. So that's kind of a nice pick-me-up in the middle of a work day. Another thing that we thought about was the baked tofu that you can buy at, I'm not sure where you're located, but like Trader Joe's has them. I'm sure Whole Foods has them. They're like marinated baked tofu in different flavors, and they're delicious cold. They don't need to be heated up at all. It sounds gross to be eating cold, uncooked tofu, but this is cooked. It's pre-cooked and delicious. So, and you can throw that on a salad or in a sandwich. I find that if you slice it really thin, it kind of tastes like cheese, which is weird. But yeah, that's delicious.
All right, everybody, and that's the end of our 11th episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Thanks so much for all the questions. We really appreciate it. If you have any more, feel free to reach out, and you can find us at Vegan Proteins on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you could even check us out at VeganProteins.com. Once again, my name's Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And thanks so much.
We'll talk to you next week.